Hello, welcome. This month, Red. This month, our genre for our genre diversity challenge was historical fiction, and I, Myranda, picked The Briar Club by Kate Quinn. Um, so Jill was already talking about it. It was not what we were expecting.
That was our real reading challenge of the year.
No, well, I mean, like, first off, it's like a murder mystery book that, like, surprise.
I feel like it was really a mystery. Like, I mean, there was like little points that you were like getting information, but I don't feel like overall it was like a mystery.
Yeah, like it wasn't suspenseful like a mystery, but you're like,
And it's not like you were being like you were trying to solve the crime. Like you were just hearing what happened up to the incident.
I don't know. It felt like a mystery to me.
it's not a mystery because the house knew who did it. Everybody knew who did it.
The police didn't know. We didn't know who did it.
We didn't even know who died.
But that's true.
That's true. Okay, the thing that I wanted to jump into and talk about first was just the structure of the book, because if you look at the book versus Fable versus audiobook, it's always structured differently. So like the book is just by chapters and then it's names, but then on Fable it's like Nora and then Nora continued and then like Arlene continued, and then you have all of these like, what are they called?
Interstitials.
Interstitials in between each chapter, which each chapter was like 2 hours long.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, do you feel like that made the story more interesting? Like having these big chunks where you're focused on each person? Do you feel like it could have been broken up? Like could each person have had like 5 chapters? Or I guess I don't really understand how chapters get split up in a story.
I feel like it just all depends on the author, because we've had other books where the chapters were like 2-3 pages.
Yeah.
And you're like flying through chapters. I definitely like, personally, I like it when they're shorter chapters, because then it's easier to be like, oh, just one more chapter. And then you're like 5 chapters later.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas when I sit down, like some of these chapters were like 50 pages long.
Yeah. I think Nora's is the longest.
They were long.
Which was quite the beast.
Nora's chapter could be a book all on its own. I mean,
could have been a book.
They could have all been books on their own. I feel like given more like details and stuff. Mm-hmm. But the interstitials were cool because it took your timeline like back to present day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I liked it.
You got to listen to the sassy house.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought they were interesting because they were in the POV of the house, which I've never read a book where the house was the narrator.
It kind of reminded me of like the Monster House.
Yeah.
The movie, but only she was a nice house. I thought it was funny when she tripped the police officer. I'm assuming it's a woman because it's a woman's house. But and at one point it was like, was it Claire or Grace? I gave her a hug the best a house could.
She didn't like Miss Nilsson.
Yeah.
And I like it as the house was talking, it just kind of it's like it was ever present, and so it would just do little annoying things to the people that it didn't like. Not even just like in that scene, but it talks about how it would do it throughout just like the history of the house. It's like, oh, I would do this annoying thing, or mostly to what do they call her? Doilies, Miss Nielsen.
Yeah.
But it's just like it's an annoying, sassy little house. And I thought that was really funny.
I think it was, I think the house giving the house a character is a fun way of showing like all of the characters kind of coming out together, because the house talks about it being asleep until Grace shows up, and that's when it kind of started waking up, and that's when it started having a personality. And I think Grace kind of did that to everybody. Like they were all just kind of going about their days and like doing what needed to be done versus what they wanted from life. And then
Yeah.
Grace shows up and she calls it nudging. She's like, I like to nudge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like people were just going about like they were just passing each other in the hallways. They weren't.
Yeah, they weren't like interacting with each other, or you see it a lot with Fliss, where she starts to realize that she can ask other people for help.
Yeah.
Where before Grace, she wouldn't have been able to ask anybody in the
I
house.
imagined it being more like an apartment building where everybody has like their own apartment that they're renting, and you just kind of like stay segregated from the people around you versus like everybody's literally living in this house.
Mm-hmm.
Like they go into the hallway to use the bathroom. There's one main kitchen. Like they probably all have kitchenettes.
Yeah.
But there's like one main kitchen, one main dining room, and they never like interact in those spaces.
Yeah.
So until Grace.
I feel like Grace is like the aunt that we all wish we had. Like she always like she encourages the kids to
Yeah.
like rebel against their crotchety mom. Like she always has the right thing to say. She's super observant and just like I don't know. She's just like Aunt Grace.
I love how everybody like kind of took the kids like under their wing.
Yeah.
And I really love how they I thought it was so cute when they went to New York for the competition.
For the Bake Off.
And they all went.
Like they all went, and like even the husbands went and like were like actually involved. Like they were invested in her and not just like, oh my gosh, I got dragged to this thing. I'd rather be like somewhere else. Like even the husbands were like concerned and knew her recipe, and I thought that was so cute.
And even like when she found out she had to go to a gala or whatever, and she's like, I don't have a dress for that. Grace is like, we've got you covered. And Fliss comes up with all these options. She's like, options? I have options for nice dresses. More than one.
Yeah.
So at the end, I was super annoyed with Arlene. And then she totally went off her freaking rocker, like murdered a senator's son because she thought he was Russian. I'm just like, what in the actual heck? Like she lost her ever-loving mind. She lost
I thought it was really funny when Arlene was like talking about Thanksgiving and wanting to come to Thanksgiving, and she's just like, why does nobody like me?
Grace is like, why do you think?
Yeah. She's like, Rika gets to be mean, and B gets to be mean. Everybody's mean. I'm mean, but nobody likes me. And Grace is just like, everybody is mean, but everybody still pitches in and like helps. She's like, when have you ever helped anybody?
Yeah.
But I just thought it was funny. She's like, nobody likes me.
because you're not likable, Arlene. You are not likable.
Even your name, like Arlene.
Okay, did you guys listen to the I know the audiobook. It's only on the audiobook at the end. There's an author and narrator interview.
I did not say
I
that
didn't
far.
get that one.
Okay, so in it, they're talking about. So Kate Quinn talks about like how she came about this story, and
I did hear that.
Arlene apparently wasn't even supposed to have a POV, and she didn't really have a background until somebody else, like another author, came along and told Kate Quinn about the like fake raid that Arlene did, where she like met that guy, and then that's how Arlene's kind of like background story came in.
The like,
which I think what
the thing in Texas.
Yeah, and they did like a mock raid of the town, and then like people got mocked arrest and stuff. But I think if Arlene didn't have a background story, she would just be like a character. Like I don't like Arlene. But if she didn't have a background story or an explanation of who she was, I would just be like, "You suck! Like, why are you in this story?" But I think that Arlene is like she's a product of where she came from. Like she was taught to be this person.
Right.
So like part of like obviously she should work on herself and change and learn from other people, but I think
She
that
needs to do some
it's not all her
self-improvement.
fault. Yeah.
Arlene was the one that was originally dating the FBI guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
like
So
2
yeah,
years.
she
He's like, "Why aren't we getting married yet? Because nobody likes you."
She doesn't like you.
yeah. So yeah, she was raised to just be that picture perfect like housewife.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like all she kind of thought. Like that was her ambition in life.
Yeah. And I
Cuz
feel like a
she
lot of her frustration comes from her not being able to fulfill that. Like she
yeah.
can't get a husband, she can't make friends, she doesn't have her own house. Like
Well, because she talks about
so.
when Grace moves in, that's why she wanted to befriend Grace, was
Mm-hmm.
because she was like this cool cat, and she had been married, and she's like, oh, she was Aunt Grace, right? Like she's like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe she can teach me the tricks or whatever of snagging a man. So, but where she went wrong was she was not actually likable. Like
Right.
she wanted to be Grace's friend, but she just wanted Grace to just like a not likable person. And that was not the thing. But I do appreciate that Grace, like, and I understand it was a little bit self-preservation, but she took Arlene with her when she left the house. Um,
Yeah.
and then Arlene ended up getting married, I guess, to a boring person. That's how Grace
But
described him.
apparently they're doing just fine.
So while we're still talking about characters, um Claire's story was like really funny to me. How she's like so she has this like goal to save $8,000 so that she can like just buy herself a house, which what a dream to buy a house for $8,000.
I wish.
But she's like stealing things from her housemates and
Yeah,
like
The like
pawning
fish.
them. Yeah.
like the
She's like
jade pendant, like the Rika bot.
yes, yes. And then I thought it was funny. I don't know if you guys caught it when I think it was when they were like drunk in Grace's room that celebrating something, and they were talking about the red lipstick.
Mm-hmm.
And then as Claire goes to leave, Grace was like, "Can you put my red lipstick back on the dresser? It's my favorite," or some. It looks really good on me, or something. And Claire was like, "Yeah, me too." And then she like puts it back.
Grace is like, I know what you're doing.
Yeah, but she's just like going into people's rooms and like taking their stuff and then hawking it so she can save the money to buy a house. And then she has her like odd jobs. She's taking pictures in the evenings to like sell to men. I was like, okay.
Well, I like how like she's just casually talking to the guy who's taking her pictures. She's like,
Photographer.
she's like, why do guys like pictures of nude women on like bombs? He's
Right.
like, I don't know, but it sells.
They do.
So he's like, men are weird. She's like, yeah, they are.
Claire was funny to me though. I liked her.
She was a good one. I really thought she was the one that was dead upstairs.
Well, yeah, because I was like talking about the red hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like, what's her name? B,
B.
the baseball player.
Yeah.
Because it was like the interstitial had talked about how like somebody was killed with a baseball bat, and then it was like the next chapter. I don't know why B has a baseball bat next to her door.
Yeah, it did that every single time because, like, even for Fliss, before it was Angela was crying and they were
Oh
like,
yeah,
"Where's her mother?" And then it's
and then
like
like,
Fliss.
and it's like everybody's like looks around. Yeah.
Yeah, who is that man over there? That's Mr. X. Now we're on to Nora's story. Like,
I guess I didn't catch that, but I did. Like, why does B have a baseball bat? I was like, okay. Oh, she played professional baseball. That makes sense. That's not as I thought. Okay, I'm kind of jumping around with my thoughts.
that's okay.
When we were at the end and we were like learning everything and we knew the Russian guy was upstairs dead and Arlene's having her moment of like, we need to call the cops or whatever, and then she just silently like excuses herself to, well, she didn't really excuse herself, but she just leaves
Just leaves.
and nobody was like paying attention. I thought she was gonna like commit suicide or something, like because they were like, she's stuffing a rag in her mouth.
Oh yeah,
And I was
there
like,
was still like the second body that you were trying to figure out who that was going to be.
right. And I was like, maybe like the thought of not turning in the Russian spy was just so much and nobody was listening to her. Like in the moment, she was just like, okay, I'm going to wander off and I'm not going to be a part of it. I'm just going to kill myself. Like I can't be alive and not turn in the Russian spy. That's where I thought that was going.
I feel like they should have been paying attention to her, especially since she wanted to call the cops.
Right.
She just
Which
wanders
she
away.
did.
I'd be
Which
like,
she
wait, come
did
back.
when she wandered
Yeah.
off. Yeah, I don't know why they just let her just go.
Yeah.
I just think about like how terrifying it all must have been because like hadn't Mr. Nielsen like just walked through the door?
So he came in and then he was talking to his kids and like hanging out with them. And then Mr.
Xander?
X showed up. Xavier.
Xavier.
He showed up and he like ran off to Nora. And then Sydney showed up and ran off to Claire. And then that's when she heard, and Grace starts making the joke about like, is this a clown car?
Well, then then she hears the door at the back and the knock at the back and she was like, she made that joke. But I was just thinking like you have like one after another like person filing into the house, what I'm assuming was like within like a few minutes of each other.
Yeah.
Which raises a question for me that I'll get to in a second. But you have like one after another coming in and then all of a sudden this man is like bursting through the back door. I mean, I know he knocked and Fliss opens the door, but then it's like Fliss is screaming, Grace is screaming, Grace is running, a man's running after her. Like these people are all just kind of like, what?
It was just a lot of chaos in one moment.
Yes.
Yeah, well, and like Fliss got like her throat cut, and so like there's like a bleeding person over here, there's a murderous person running after a running person over here.
Right, you just walked into the house like I'm like
everybody else had their own like drama. Yeah
I'm just like the whole scene would have been so confusing and like so much going on. It would have been crazy. But then my other question is, so Krill, whatever his name was,
Kirill,
he had to have been like wandering. Yeah, he had to have been wandering the backyard looking for something, and then he found the sickle. But you have all these people that have just been coming through the door in the front yard. So like nobody saw somebody walk around the back, or he's just been back there for that long.
Or they were all just focused on their one goal.
Maybe.
They didn't notice a man
Slip into the backyard.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like Xavier's pretty observant that if it had been obvious. But this guy's like trained in espionage.
He is trained.
So,
yeah.
And I guess it also depends. Like, it's Washington, D.C. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe they had an alleyway or something.
Yeah.
Or he could have like come from a neighbor's backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it didn't seem weird. Like, if somebody came to my house and was knocking on my back door, I'd be like, what the heck? Like,
yeah, I wouldn't open it. I'd be like what?
Why are you? But to them, it just seemed like oh, somebody used this door instead of the front door.
I think though, like New England area, I mean Washington D.C. is not there, but don't they generally use the back door?
Yeah, so when we lived in New Jersey, all of the front doors faced each other, and there was like
Mm-hmm.
a courtyard in the middle. And then we all drove around to the back of the house, and that's where we parked our car, and we went in through the back door.
Yeah.
So that's how all the houses were set up until they started building new houses. But yeah, generally, like everybody just went in the back door.
But if people came to your house, did they come in the back door?
No.
Would you have thought it was
No.
weird if somebody was knocking on your back door?
Well, yes, but we had a fence.
Oh.
So, but all of our packages were delivered to the back door. Like the delivery people would just drop them off at the back
Didn't
door.
seem like they were weirded out by it, but also maybe Kate Quinn just didn't write that. Like,
She's like, that wouldn't work for my story. That's not gonna happen.
Nobody is weirded out by somebody coming to the back door.
Were you guys surprised to find out that Grace was a spy? Because I think if,
Yes.
like, for me, if it had been at the very beginning of the book, I would have been like, oh, interesting. But I feel
Right.
like it kind of like they talk so much about spies, and you're like, who the heck is Grace the whole time?
And they have
But by
so
the
many
end, I was like,
conversations as like groups of like the whole group has conversations about spies. And then like Rika got fired because she had communist sympathies or like previous communist ties.
Yeah. Like I don't think like I guessed Grace was a spy.
No.
But I
did
think
not.
it made sense by the end. But I was like,
yeah,
oh,
I thought
okay,
that she was
that's who
on
Grace
the
is.
run from something. Like it felt like she was hiding from something because she was talking about how she hated her husband. And then she never like divulged anything about herself. She would always talk about other people, and then she like evaded questions about herself. So
Mhm.
I figured she was like on the run. But when they were like, oh, she was actually this highly trained undercover, like I was like, oh, I would not have like pulled that out. I was intrigued though when she took Fliss out and they the club that they were at got like
Oh yeah,
raided.
rated.
Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I saw her have a knife, like and she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a knife. And then you find out that it's
Yeah.
just like a lipstick tube that she like opens up and can slash people with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought I was like, she had a knife. Like she's something. But maybe she's just
But she
running for her
also
life. I don't know.
she states later, she's like, I'm not good at hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
You're like,
She
you
seems
aren't?
pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Well, her gun didn't. Well, I guess guns aren't hand-to-hand combat, but her gun did not work for her.
And not only is she like she's not just a spy, like she found actual information that would have changed everything
Right.
and then decided not to share that.
Yeah. I thought was it no, it was Rika, I think, when Arlene was talking about her fake raid, her fake invasion.
Mm-hmm.
And Rika was like, you like in her head, her own thoughts. She was like, you wouldn't like it. It's not the same. Whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Arlene's like, I don't have to imagine what it would be like if they invaded. That was my best, like Southern Belle.
Arlene was giggling and laughing and then flirting with the soldiers. Like,
right. And they were like, you would not be baking the Russians pies.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking as they were having that whole conversation, Grace, like, Rika was from. Where was Rika from?
Berlin.
Oh, yeah.
She's German?
She was Hungarian, but she was she had like, I think she was a refugee from Berlin, but she was Hungarian.
I
Okay.
think her mom was Hungarian and married a German,
Oh,
and
maybe.
then the war happened.
So I don't know, like I don't know the difference between how bad it was in Germany versus like what Grace was describing as in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think Germany was ever like a true communist state, but I don't know. I might be wrong. But Russia was like, I think Russia still is. I don't know. Anyways,
I don't know that much.
I don't actually know that much. But she was talking about how, people were killing for the 125 grams of bread and stuff like that. And so I was just thinking like what her thoughts would be as she's listening to, because we heard
Arlene.
Rika's thoughts, but we didn't know that Grace lived similarly.
Yeah.
Well, and
And
how
so,
hard it would have been for her to like hold her tongue
yeah,
when that was her actual life.
Mm-hmm.
And
right, right. Like Arlene's talking about, I don't have to imagine what it would be like if the Russians invaded. And Grace is like, I don't have to imagine what Russians are like. Like, not even just invaded.
I
Like,
don't have to imagine, period.
I don't have to imagine Russians. Period.
yeah, like they
So,
terrorize their own people. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
yep.
it would have been really hard, I think, for Grace to just be like, not just be Grace, not say anything, just be totally
Yeah.
silent on the matter. Arlene, I'm just telling you, Arlene is the least likable character out of everybody in the whole book. Like I don't care that that's how she was raised. I think that there is a factor of just like that is who she decided to be.
Yeah.
Because you can be raised in some really awful, horrible circumstances. Look at Grace and not become this like person.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a factor in
I
there
think I
of this
think
is who
like
she chose to be.
part of her image, like she just looked at these women who were like high society, they were the perfect wives to these like senators or whatever, and she just saw, what they were willing to kind of show to the public and what she could see from afar. And she just had this image of like they're just so elite, and like she wanted to be elite, and she just thought like, I have to present myself like this so that men who are looking for that will see me. And I think that's where her kind of like unlikability comes from, is that she just has to act like she is the best and the most elite and all these things,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what she thinks
Well,
she's supposed to be.
well, even like I had the thought when Harlan started seeing B, and when they had met at the baseball game or whatever, and it was after he had broken up with Arlene, and he was talking about the kind of wife he wasn't looking for, and he wasn't looking for somebody that talked like Arlene, where she was like, "Oh, this person is bad and this person is terrible and these kind of people are not good." He's like, that's not who I wanted. And so I just feel, and they dated for 2 years. And so I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like she has in her brain how things are supposed to be, but she's
Right.
just
Like,
not paying attention to the world around her and how people
right.
actually don't like that.
Right. Like, I think like she just kind of saw these women and she was trying to imitate them, but she's not on the inside circle to really know who these women are. And
Mm-hmm.
so she's just like, yeah, no, I shouldn't like B, because B is, a little more rough around the edges. So,
Yeah, or like the senator's wife, or whatever, Sydney
Sydney.
Sutherland.
Yeah.
She's like looking at her, thinking that she's this pristine thing. She doesn't know she's being beaten to crap. Like
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
behind closed doors, her husband is brutally beating her. I'm like, that's the life you want. That's the life you want, Arlene.
Right.
Like,
Or even with like Fliss, because she like tries to be Fliss's friend, but just purely to learn how she got a husband. And it's like, yeah, but Fliss is smiling and making it look like it's easy when behind closed doors she's like having panic attacks
And she's
and
not
can't
sleeping.
sleep and misses her husband and like
Yeah,
it's
Yeah.
she says like Fliss. All of these all these characters were so like well developed. I feel like
Mhm.
because yeah, Fliss has her own things. Like I typed on Fable. I was like, if I was her friend and I knew that like she was not sleeping for more than 5 minutes because she's like scared about her baby. I'm like, I would be telling her she needs to get looked at for like postpartum anxiety. Like,
Mhm.
I'm
I
like,
don't think that that was
she's
a thing in the 50s.
no,
I
I'm
think
sure it wasn't.
I think women got institutionalized when they talked the way she talked in her head. They
Right.
were
She's
like
just like bad mom, bad mom, bad mom.
like she had
Yeah.
severe like manic depressive because she's like I don't feel anything. She's like I
Yeah.
don't feel anything when I look at my child. Like she had severe depression. But she
Mhm.
would have been institutionalized if she had like gone to the doctor.
Yeah.
So,
Unless it
Yeah.
was her uncle, who
Her
wasn't really her
uncle.
uncle.
He
it
wasn't?
was
No, it was her husband's uncle. I mean, so
Oh, yeah. Okay.
but she knew him before she knew her husband. She
Yeah.
met her
That's,
husband because of him.
yeah.
I also thought it was kind of interesting the whole conversation with how they were developing birth control. And
Mhm.
it was kind of like a flip side to the way it's talked about these days. Like these days it's like it's either so that women can have sex and not get pregnant, or the women are like, oh, this hormonal birth control is ruining our hormones, which, you know, like it's not great. But they're like, why don't the men take birth control? And I'm like,
Mhm.
so hearing about how these women were basically forced to have children when Fliss was talking about her uncle, how he was seeing women who were like in their 20s on their 10th kid with their teeth falling out and all of this stuff. Like when he tells them they're pregnant, they're like, yay. Like, so like that was the point of the birth control, was so that women could like secretly take it
Mhm.
so that their husbands couldn't force them to get pregnant. And I was like, that's a totally different perspective than I think we're used to seeing. Like it's
Yeah.
not great for your body, but it had a purpose then. Like it was good for women then. So I thought that was interesting.
It gives the control back to them in a situation that they don't have any control in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It gave them a right to something because women's rights, I mean, even women's rights now are like just borderline. But like they didn't have a right to anything.
Mhm.
Like she couldn't even when Sydney's husband died, when Arlene killed him, and
Mhm.
she was a widow, even then she didn't have control of her own money.
Yeah.
Like even then her father-in-law could have taken her son from her. I
Yeah.
was just like, if anyways.
I mean, like
So
the scene where Mr. Nielsen comes back and he's like, she can't sell the house. Like at first, like it's a good thing that he was like, she can't get rid of this house. You guys don't have to go anywhere. But also, I was like, well, that kind of sucks. Like she has no control over anything.
yeah, she didn't actually own the house. He allowed her
Yeah.
to live there with the kids because everybody was
Mhm.
telling him that he was bad for his family, so that's why he left.
Yeah.
And so I mean, she didn't actually have owner. She wasn't allowed. She wasn't allowed to own the house. But
Fun times.
yeah,
Hey.
fun times.
Um, Going back to the characters being well developed, this goes back to the author interview. Because when I was reading it, I was like, why are we like, what does any of this have to do with like a murder? And how does this like relate back to Grace? Because every single person has interactions with Grace. But I thought it was interesting that each person kind of represents like a facet of culture at that time. So like
Mm-hmm.
Quinn took like, okay, there was whatever was going on with the Soviets, and that became Grace. And then there was like the pop culture and how kids' lives are reflected now, like how we look back on what it was like to be a kid in America versus what it was actually like. And that became Peter and Lena, and like so on. And then just
Mm-hmm.
like giving them their different ages um, to give them that different experience and diversity. Um, I thought that was just like an interesting way to use history, because I was wondering who the heck these people were. I was like, are these real people like that she just kind of like put together, or is this like a real story that she kind of slightly changed? But they're all made up characters. They're just like symbols for different things that were going on at the same time and how those things affected each other, which I think is an interesting way to like bring characters together.
I mean, some of the characters were actual, like she used uh McCarthy was a real person.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then I think
The
even the Sutherlands were
No, the
real
Sutherlands are
people.
fake. They're made up.
But
But like
Xavier was like two people that she had
yeah, he was
combined.
two different men. So was Nora. She was the two different women that were a part of those two different men that she combined. Um Arlene's was based off of just the mock stuff. Who else is there?
Yeah, and I think Claire was like
Claire.
not Claire. What was I thinking?
B.
I was thinking Grace. Grace was
Oh.
like it was a made up narrative uh about how like people would leave Russia. Like the
Mm-hmm.
only way to leave Russia was to join the spy force. And then
Yeah.
how like so many people defected once they got to
Mm-hmm.
America because they realized that Russia was actually the bad place to be then,
Yeah.
now, ever. Was Russia ever a good place to be? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know
I
Russia's
don't know.
history.
Me neither. So I think it was fun. I think it was fun the way she used history and like created characters out of the history.
I thought it was a really fun historical fiction. And I've heard, like, just from posting online and stuff, I've heard that her other books are, like, good too.
I saw someone say that this is their favorite from her,
Oh, yeah.
but
It was really, I mean, it was really good. Are all of her books historical fiction or?
yeah.
Okay. I did listen to,
Um,
like, just a little bit of the historical note and, like, how the book came to be and how, like, she had this, like, idea. I think she said she had an idea of like somebody moving into the house and like bringing a house together. And
Mm-hmm.
like she had Grace's room in her head. And like that
Yeah.
kept like coming back to her. And she was like, that's not a plot. Like, she was like, I want to write this book about this
She's like,
woman.
there could be recipes in the book,
Right. But
but
she's
that's not a story.
I'm sorry. And then she was like, she said that her husband was like watching a documentary or something about Russian spies who would come to the US and then defect and stuff. And she was like, she said whatever she was watching, she like paused it and she was like, tell me more. And she was like, and that is how my story was born.
I think she even used like a TV show. She had mentioned a TV show about a guy who was like discovering the lives of people in some building or something.
Yeah,
And
it was like some chef. My power really wants to turn off. Okay. It was like some chef who was like collecting stories from people, or she talks about a league of Europe of their own, which is where B came from. So like she was just constantly pulling stuff. And Xavier and Nora, she wrote their diner scene. She wrote that back in 2008. So like she just had them sitting there like for years.
Those poor people stuck in a diner. I did like Xavier and Nora's story. I feel like I would read that book. I would read that book.
I'm sure somewhere out there there's that book, but I want to share this quote real quick because I think it kind of sums up a lot of like everybody's stories. Well, not sums them up, but like it affects everybody's stories. So it's Grace talking to Pete. And she says, yeah, the boy. She says, life really hasn't been very fair to you, Pete.
I love this quote.
I'm sorry about that. Mom says life isn't fair, and that's all there is to it. Your mom says that to justify the fact that she isn't being fair to you, Miss Grace said calmly, which is mostly what people mean when they say life isn't fair. It isn't, which is why people should endeavor to be more fair to one another, not less. I just felt like that kind of like summed up the story with just like everybody struggling through their lives and then Grace coming in to create this community that supports them and helps them get to where they want to be.
Well, even something that carried on past like when she left, because even after she left, when people were coming into the house, they're like, oh, we have Thursday night dinners. So like even like that was her legacy, was this group.
Right. And I think they still left the vine up. Right?
Yeah, because the girl who came in to rent the room was asking about it, who had drawn it, and they said it was a previous tenant.
So I had a thought about how Miss Nielsen, like, normally because her poker game or whatever she goes to play is always on Thursdays. And so with Thanksgiving being on Thursday, she typically does like a really poor job at a Thanksgiving lunch type thing. Yeah. And then she like runs off to her game. And so like this year in 1954, she wanted it to be like a whole day thing, right? And so I just imagine like she's already not a happy person. And I just imagine she's gone for the whole day. And they never say like when she comes back, but the detective is interviewing people till like 4 a.m.
So she just comes back to detectives and a murder scene?
Yeah, so like at some point she's like, the one time I leave all day long. Like everything, like there's burnt turkey smell in the house, there's 2 dead bodies, there's detectives, Fliss is bleeding.
There's twice the amount of people in there than live there. Like
15 people. Her ex-husband is back. Like I just imagine her walking through the door and being like, what is going on? Like being so mad.
I'm never leaving this house again.
Yeah.
That would be weird. I mean, no wonder her first response is, we're selling this house. We're selling it. We're selling the house.
Well, she was already thinking that before everything. Because the house was...
True.
Well,
I
think the house was freaking out about it during the interstitials. So maybe...
Because she had mentioned it to Pete.
Yeah. But I think she mentions it in 1954 around the Thanksgiving time.
Yeah, I did just have the thought as you were talking about her poker games that like she talks about being so poor. But like she's cashing these checks from their dad. What is she doing with the money? Is she taking it to her poker games? And then like losing
Maybe she's
it?
not telling people. She's telling everybody that he doesn't send money. So,
yeah.
Like, what is she doing with the money? I'm so confused.
She's got it rolled up somewhere, hidden.
And then I was really mad. So even though Mrs. Nielsen is unlikable, she's not as unlikable as Arlene. But like the fact that she was
Wait, you like Mrs. Nielsen more than Arlene?
yes, if I had to rate them, like Arlene would be number 1 least likable.
That's like, to me, that's
Mrs.
like
Nielsen
when
would be number
people
2.
say they like Voldemort more than Mrs. Umbridge, Professor Umbridge.
Yes, I agree with that though. Like I would probably like Voldemort more than Professor Umbridge. Yes. So, but yeah.
I don't know that I could say I like Mrs. Nielsen more than Arlene. I think she was.
I mean, she was
They're
pretty
like
rotten.
the same.
She made Peter drop out of school to earn money,
Okay, maybe
so that
maybe
she
they're
could go
different
gamble.
then.
She refused to get her daughter glasses. Her daughter couldn't even read to tell the difference between baking powder and baking soda, and her cooking was terrible until she got glasses. And
That's true.
the tenants had to pay.
She was always talking like trash to her daughter, like not making her feel very good about herself. That's true. Those are all true things. Maybe they're like this.
On the same level.
Maybe they're just differently unlikable.
I think that Arlene has a chance to grow and be different as people, like, if people were just honest with her and were like,
her.
Look, you don't need to be like this. Like, we can be friends. Versus Mrs. Nielsen, who's just old and crabby and probably a gambling addict. And
I'm pretty sure she went to bingo also, but not poker, but
oh, bingo, not poker.
She is who she is.
She went to a game. Like, it was a game because they said that it was people who they weren't, like, none of them were nice. That's why their games didn't stop even for Thanksgiving, because nobody really wanted them around. So I feel like that's more than bingo.
Maybe. I mean,
wait, she had a group of friends who were also unlikable?
No, yes. She just went and hung out with unlikable people. I don't know that they were friends.
Yes, I agree.
She's like, these people also don't have people who like them. So I'm going to go hang out with those unlikable people.
They probably, like, they all probably complain about their life, and they each, like, agree and, like, coddle each other.
It's the whole, I'm tired. I'm more tired. Yeah? Well, I haven't slept in 10 years. Like,
I'm just going to say it was poker. I don't know that I could really say that.
She doesn't seem cool enough to play poker thing. She seems more like a
now I need to figure out
lady.
It could have been bridge. I feel like I need
Bunko.
Okay, the book focuses a lot around food, which now that we're talking about Mrs. Nielsen, I think is interesting because all of her food was like awful and people didn't want to eat her food. And then Grace shows up and she's like cooking good food and people like start gathering around the food. And then there's all of the like recipes in the book. So I was just wondering like what you guys thought of food in relationship to this story and how it affects everybody. / do you think that the recipes were necessary? Like, I think the very last instruction for all of the recipes was the important part. But, like, did there need to be a bunch of recipes in this book?
I mean, I fast-forwarded through them because the book itself was already listed at 16 hours. And I was like, well, I can skip a couple minutes if I don't listen to the recipes.
Just so you know, at the end of each recipe, it would be like, and then enjoy this with your friend on a summer day listening to this song. Like every single one ended like that.
I did like that part of the recipe, that it was like, it gave you like a song and a circumstance for why you would prepare. I would be interested to try some of these recipes.
I was laughing.
The bananas Foster one sounds really good.
The banana dessert where everybody was like making fun of her, and she's like, it's just a banana. And like,
it reminds me. Do you remember years ago, like the Pinterest fails? And like
Yeah.
the banana dipped in chocolate.
But like everybody's laughing. Rika's like making jokes about it, and people are just laughing, and she's like, "No!"
Well, like when you listen to the recipe,
I think it was
it's
even
like,
topped with a cherry, wasn't it?
yeah, so like the banana is stuck upright on a pineapple ring with a cherry on top. Like, what in the actual heck? Who made up this recipe? Whose idea?
I don't know. It was the 1950s. If you see those recipes, like
Like that
those are
guy
some
on
crazy
Instagram who
recipes.
does the vintage recipes.
Yeah. I just thought it was
yeah.
interesting because, like, I've heard people talk about before that, like, food brings people together, and that was like this big thing for them, that food brought them together.
Well, and then also there's like the other side of it because like Grace had that tower of cans in her apartment or in her room that was like almost like her security because
Yeah.
she went through like food scarcity. You know, she was like, or
Well,
she
even
has
like
food
she
in,
was starving. Like she was starving because she
right,
talks about how like she feels her body to like make sure that she's soft and not bony.
right. So like they've all kind of, I feel like all of them have had some sort of experience with like not having enough food.
Yeah.
Because even Rika is like, I eat a can of soup or whatever every night except for on Thursdays.
Mm-hmm.
That's the night that like I eat well. And um so I just feel like they all have experience with insecurity and then having like an abundance and like gathering around that and like having enough together kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to look at the recipe for the one that she used in the baking competition.
The honey
Oh,
bun
like
one,
the
That's,
honey.
whatever it is.
yeah.
It has like it has like a different name, but then Grace was like,
It has a
well, we'll just
Russian
call it.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was like, you can't. She's like, I can't give her the Russian name and have her submit that. Nobody would like it.
I thought it was fun that she got like friends from that
Out
baking
of the baking
competition. Like yeah, because at her school everybody would always make fun of her and she didn't have any friends, and that was like a big deal in the beginning of the story that she couldn't read and people make fun of her because she was cross-eyed and she didn't have friends, and that was the whole reason why her brother kind of wanted to encourage her to cook in the beginning, was because to give her confidence in something.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was cool that she made some friends. And they were like pen pals.
It's
And they would
called
trade recipes.
it's called Kitty's Medovic or Lena's 8-layer honey cloud cake.
8 layers.
8-layer.
That's enough slices.
That's a lot.
Okay, well, I think those are all the questions that I had. So,
What would
you
we
guys rate it?
I
I said
would-
4.5.
That's what I was leaning towards.
Like,
Yeah.
I thought it
okay
was
with
really
that.
good, especially since I've always super skeptical about historical fiction. I'm always like, this is gonna be so boring. But I had fun reading it. But there were some like slow times. There were some times where it just like slowed down and I had to kind of push through. And if the chapters were shorter, I would rate it higher.
Yeah, I definitely
I
think
think
the
I
chapters
didn't
could be
even
broken
look
up.
I didn't even look at the chapters until I realized I had been listening to the book for 4 hours, and I was like, I have to be like a good amount of into the book. And I was like, chapter 2. I'm like, what in the heck? Chapter 2. So,
I think technically the book has 9 chapters, but it's a 400-page book.
I mean, ignorance is definitely bliss. If you just don't look at how many chapters there are, just listen to the book. That's your best option.
Which I think that's one of our highest rated books. Good job, Myranda.
Gold star. So next month we're reading a classic, is what it said, but we're gonna pivot and we're gonna say we're gonna read something related to a classic because I don't really think that I could sit down and read like Jane Austen in December. I don't think that that's gonna work for me. So I picked a book. I don't actually know how to say the title. Is it Hide and See or Hidden See?
Can you spell it?
Hiddensee. It's by Gregory Maguire, who wrote Wicked, actually. That is not why I chose it, but okay, so I should read this. It says,
Hold on. Oh, that was my ear. Hidden Z.
Hidden Z. Okay. Hidden Z.
It says it's a German
We'll
word.
Oh, okay. An island of white sandy beaches, salt marshes, steep cliffs, and pine forest north of Berlin. That makes sense. In the Baltic Sea, an island that is enchanting bohemian retreat and home to a large artist colony, a wellspring of inspiration for the romantic imagination. That's what Hidden Z is.
Oh.
Anyways, so this is the book. Having brought his legions of devoted Nope, that's not it. Hold on. That's talking about the author. Hold on. Okay. Hidden Z imagines the backstory of the Nutcracker, revealing how this entrancing creature came to be carved and how he guided an ailing girl named Clara through a dreamy paradise on a Christmas Eve. At the heart of Hoffman's mysterious tale hovers Godfather Drosselmeyer, the ominous, canny, one-eyed toy maker made immortal by Petipa and Tchaikovsky's fairy tale ballet, who presents the once and future Nutcracker to Clara, his goddaughter. But Hidden Z is not just a retelling of a classic story. Maguire discovers the flowering of German romanticism ties to Hellenic. I don't think this actually tells you what the book is about. Hold
Are you
on.
looking on Amazon?
Yeah, that's the. Hold on. Maybe I can. Let's Google it.
He follows the life of Drosselmeyer, a toy maker and godfather of the
That's
child
what
at
Kelsey's
the
just reading.
He is found and raised in the forest by an old woman and woodcutter, later revealed to be the adult version of Hansel and Gretel. Can we not find an actual summary for this book?
No, hold on. It's got to be somewhere, right? We chose the book. It sounded interesting. I feel like I read something that was interesting. Is there like a picture of the cover somewhere?
Hidden Sea, an island of white sandy beaches, salt marshes, steep cliffs, and pine forests is a retreat. Nope, that's the same thing.
That's talking about the island. Anyways, should be good, guys, because it is a story about the Nutcracker, which is Christmas, and
I think it's a story about Drosselmeyer,
probably
who is the man who makes the Nutcracker.
And it's also written by the guy who wrote Wicked and the Ugly Stepsister one. He writes all of the ones that are retellings from a different point of view. So, like, he wrote Chronicles of Narnia based on, like, Aslan's point of view. And he wrote the Ugly Stepsister one. I think he wrote a Wicked Queen one called Mirror Mirror. Anyways, so he, like, writes all of these. He writes all of these.
So it's the backstory of
retelling.
the Nutcracker, revealing how the creature came to be carved and how he guided the girl. So that's what it is. It's the Nutcracker's backstory.
Nutcracker's point of view, whereas the Nutcracker is in the point of view of Clara.
At the heart of Hoffman's mysterious tale hovers Godfather Drosselmeyer, the ominous, canny, one-eyed toy maker made immortal by the ballet, who presents the once and future Nutcracker to Clara.
So the advice that I have to give is read the book and figure out what it's about.
Hashtag
Yeah,
goals.
there is there. I did just find a review that said that it can get pretty Grimm Brothersy.
Like a
Like
dark, yeah.
yeah, like it can get violent and graphic.
I would say if you've read Wicked, the book, it is not family friendly. So if that's who's writing it, this is not a book that you should listen to with your children around.
I've seen TikToks where people are holding the books and they're like starting to sing Popular, and they're like, Popular, you're gonna be traumatized. Do not let your children read this book.
Have you guys read Wicked?
No,
I've
I haven't
not
even
read
seen the play.
Okay, I'm not going to explain it, but it's like the first chapter. You're like, oh, X-rated scene there. So,
Oh. It's like when I started to watch Bridgerton and it was just butts flying. And you're like, what is happening? I'm like,
no, I read Wicked because
start?
I read Wicked because Mom said I couldn't read it and she hid it in her closet, and so I went and got
Mom
it.
read Wicked?
Yeah.
Mom reads everything. Don't be surprised about what Mom reads.
Well, I'm just surprised
Anyways.
that she read Wicked because it's not like a vampire romance. Or like fairies or like werewolves.
But
I'm just surprised.
Has Mom read Akatar? Does anybody know?
I don't think so.
Likely not. Probably not.
No. She reads the romances with the like men's chest on their on the books.
She has Fabio.
Fabio.
I actually steer clear of all of those because I just feel like they're cheesy. Like I don't want to look.
I only
I
read
don't
the
want
romances with the cute like animations on the front.
Yes.
Okay, so funny moment at work today. I was telling, so I still have to have like a preceptor because I haven't been at this job long enough. So I was telling this guy who's helping me at work today. I was like, man, I only have 25 minutes left in my audiobook and I really want to find out what happens at the end of the book. And he goes, is it one of those like spicy books? Like he like gives me this look, and I was like, no, it's not spicy. He's like, oh, he's like, I like to listen to those on my road trip. I was like, oh, okay.
Like he was gonna be against it.
Yeah. And he was like, sometimes I'll just be driving, and then I'm like, oh. And I was like, which one? What do you listen to? He was like, I like Twisted Love. That's a good one.
I hate that book. Okay.
And then he also said that he liked Neon Gods, which I've never heard of.
Oh, I read the first one. I don't think you should read it.
And then, I mean, not that I was asking for book recommendations. He was just telling me. He said there was another one similar to Neon Gods, but he couldn't remember the title of it. But he's like just this like kind of big burly guy, and he's like, yeah, I listen to spicy romance on my road trips. I was like, man, don't ever judge nobody because you never know. Like,
okay, well, I'm gonna end this now because my house is trying to shut down.
okay,
so we'll do this next month.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe and then follow us on whatever social media platform you use the most. The link for next month's book is going to be down in the description below, so grab your copy and then make sure to share all your thoughts with us.